The rain fell hard on Titan 7, mixing with the chemical dust that covered everything. Kang Do-hyun stood at the edge of the salvage yard, watching the gray water run down mountains of broken ships. He was 18 years old, thin from years of not eating enough, and tired in a way that young people should never be tired. He had lived in this place his whole life. The salvage yard was his home, his school, and his prison. Every day he woke up in a small metal room, ate whatever food he could find, and spent hours pulling apart dead spacecraft. He removed engines, stripped wiring, and saved anything that might be worth a few credits. It was boring work. It was hard work. But it was the only work he knew. Do-hyun had no family. His parents died when he was very young, killed in a mining accident that nobody wanted to talk about. He grew up among the workers of the salvage yard, learning to fix things before he learned to read properly. The other workers were kind enough, but they had their own problems. Nobody had time to raise a child. So Do-hyun raised himself. At night, when the work was done, he would climb to the top of the tallest scrap pile and look up at the stars. Somewhere out there, beyond the gray clouds and the chemical rain, there was a whole galaxy. Humans had spread to 3 star systems now. They had colonies on dozens of moons and planets. They had met alien species and traded with them, and learned that Earth was just a tiny dot in a very big universe. Do-hyun wanted to see it all. He wanted to fly between the stars and visit places that had no gray rain and no salvage yards. He wanted to be free, but freedom cost money, a ship cost money, and Do-hyun had very little of either. He had been saving for years. Every credit he earned, he put away. He ate less, so he could save more. He wore the same clothes until they fell apart. He never bought anything he did not absolutely need. After 8 years of this, he had saved enough to buy a small transport ship. Nothing fancy, nothing fast, just a way off this moon. Then he saw the auction listing. It appeared on his old datapad one evening, mixed in with the usual advertisements for ship parts and repair services. A Velthari-class fighter was for sale. The price was so low that Do-hyun thought it must be a mistake. Ships like that usually cost 10 times what he had saved. This one cost exactly what he had saved, down to the last credit. He read the listing 3 times. The ship was old, over 300 years. It had been through many battles and many owners. The current seller was a woman named Bae Yuna who ran a small trading post on the edge of the system. The listing said the ship flew fine but had some problems that were hard to explain. Do-hyun did not care about problems. He cared about flying. He contacted Bae Yuna that same night. She answered his call with a tired face and suspicious eyes. When he told her he wanted to buy the ship, she laughed. "You and everyone else," she said. "That ship has been sold 12 times in the past 5 years. Everyone brings it back." "That's not." "Why?" Do-hyun asked. Yuna looked uncomfortable. "They say it's cursed. Strange things happen on that ship. Systems turn on by themselves. People hear voices when nobody is there. The last owner said he saw ghosts." "I don't believe in ghosts," Do-hyun said. Neither did he. Before he bought the ship, Do-hyun thought about this for a moment. He thought about the gray rain and the salvage yard and the years of work still ahead of him if he waited for a better opportunity. He thought about the stars he watched every night. "I'll take it," he said. Yuna shrugged. "Your funeral, kid. But don't say I didn't warn you." The next week was the longest of Do-hyun's life. He had to arrange transport to Yuna's trading post, which took 2 days on a crowded cargo hauler. He had to fill out paperwork and transfer his credits and sign documents that said he understood the ship was sold as is with no refunds. When he finally saw the ship, his heart nearly stopped. It was beautiful. The Velthari-class fighter sat alone in Yuna's hangar, covered in dust but still proud. Its hull was dark metal, scarred by weapons fire, and marked by burns from atmospheric entry. Strange symbols decorated its surface, writing in a language Do-hyun did not recognize. The symbols seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. Though that might have been his imagination. The ship was small, built for one pilot with a little extra room for cargo. It had two engines that looked more powerful than anything Do-hyun had ever worked on. Its cockpit was a bubble of reinforced glass that gave a perfect view of everything around it. "She's 300 years old," Yuna said, standing beside him. "Built before humans even had faster-than-light travel. We don't know who made her, or why. She just showed up at an auction about 50 years ago, and she's been bouncing around ever since." Do-hyun walked around the ship slowly, running his hand along the cool metal. He could feel something when he touched it. A vibration, maybe. A pulse. Like the ship was alive and breathing. "I'll take good care of her," he said. Yuna handed him the access codes. "Good luck, kid. You're going to need it." That night, Do-hyun sat in the cockpit of his new ship. His ship. He still could not believe those words. After 18 years of waiting, he finally had a way to reach the stars. He started running diagnostics, checking each system one by one the way he had learned in the salvage yard. The engines were old but strong. The navigation computer was outdated but functional. The life support systems worked perfectly. Then, as he was checking the communication array, something strange happened. The lights in the cockpit flickered. The screens went dark. For a moment, everything was silent and black. Then, a figure appeared. It was a hologram, blue and glowing, shaped like a person but not quite human. The figure had too many joints in its arms, and its eyes were too large for its face. It looked at Do-hyun as if it could see him, as if it knew him, and then it spoke. The words were in a language Do-hyun had never heard before, full of sounds that human throats could not make. But somehow, impossibly, he understood every word. "You are not them," the figure said. "But you will do. The coordinates must reach the living. We are not gone. We are waiting." The hologram reached out its hand toward Do-hyun. He flinched back, heart pounding. But the figure was already fading. The lights came back on. The screens returned to normal. On the navigation computer, a new destination had appeared. A set of coordinates pointing to a region of space that Do-hyun had never seen on any map. He sat in the silence of the cockpit for a long time, trying to understand what had just happened. The ship hummed around him, patient and waiting. Somewhere in the galaxy, something had been lost for a very long time, and it had just asked Do-hyun to find it. Do-hyun did not sleep that night. He sat in the cockpit and stared at the coordinates on his screen, trying to make sense of what he had seen. The hologram had felt real. The voice had felt real. But holograms did not appear from nowhere, and voices did not speak in languages that somehow made sense to people who had never heard them before. He ran every diagnostic test he knew. He searched every file in the ship's computer. He found nothing that explained what had happened. The ship's systems showed no record of the hologram, no trace of the voice. According to the computer, nothing unusual had occurred at all. But the coordinates were still there, glowing softly on the navigation screen. They pointed to a place far beyond human space, in a region that did not appear on any official map. Do-hyun needed help. He needed someone who understood computers better than he did, someone who could dig deeper into the ship's systems and find answers. He knew only one person who might be able to help. Park So-mi was 20 years old, 2 years older than Do-hyun, and studying engineering at the technical college on Titan III. They had met 3 years ago when So-mi came to the salvage yard looking for parts for a school project. Do-hyun had helped her find what she needed, and somehow they had become friends. So-mi was not like the other people Do-hyun knew. She asked questions about everything. She wanted to understand how things worked, not just fix them. She stayed up late, reading about physics and mathematics and ancient history. She believed that knowledge was the most valuable thing in the universe. She was also very good at finding information that other people wanted to keep hidden. Do-hyun sent her a message, explaining what had happened. He expected her to laugh at him, or tell him he was dreaming. Instead, she sent back a single word. "Coming." She arrived 2 days later, carrying a bag full of equipment, and wearing the same look of intense curiosity that she always had when she found a good problem to solve. "Show me everything," she said. Do-hyun showed her the ship, the coordinates, and the place where the hologram had appeared. Somi connected her equipment to the ship's computer and began working. Hours passed. Do-hyun brought her food and water, which she mostly ignored. The sun set and rose again, and still she worked. Finally, on the second day, she called him into the cockpit. "I found something," she said. Her voice was strange, tight with excitement and something that might have been fear. "The ship's computer has layers. The top layer is normal, just basic navigation and life support. But underneath that, there are older systems, much older. They were hidden so well that I almost missed them." She pointed at her screen. Lines of code scrolled past, written in symbols that looked like the strange writing on the ship's hull. "This ship was built by a species called the HFY," Somi said. "I found references to them in old Federation records. They disappeared about 4,000 years ago. The official story is that they destroyed themselves in some kind of war or accident. Nobody knows for sure." 4,000 years, Do-hyun repeated. "This ship is 300 years old. That's what the seller thought. But these hidden systems are much older than that. I think the ship was rebuilt at some point, given new engines and a new hull. But the core systems are original. They've been waiting all this time." "Waiting for what?" Somi turned to look at him. Her eyes were serious. "I found a message buried deep in the code. It's old and damaged, but I managed to recover most of it. The HFY didn't destroy themselves, Do-hyun. They were killed." She brought up a new screen. The message appeared in the strange HFY language, but below it was a translation that Somi had created. "There was an agreement among the oldest species in the galaxy," she read aloud. "They called it the Accord. Any species that grew too powerful, too advanced, too dangerous, was eliminated. Not conquered or controlled, but completely destroyed. Every planet, every station, every ship, every person. Gone." Do-hyun felt cold. "Why?" "The message says the old species were afraid. They had ruled the galaxy for millions of years, and they wanted to keep ruling it. Any new species that might challenge them was a threat. The HFY were smart and creative and growing fast. Too fast. So the Accord decided they had to die. But the hologram said they're waiting. It said they're not gone." Somi nodded. "That's the interesting part. According to this message, some of the HFY escaped. They hid in a place called the Veil, a region of space where no signals can get in or out. They went into some kind of deep sleep, hoping that someday a younger species would find them and wake them up." She pointed at the coordinates on the navigation screen. "That's where the Veil is. That's where they've been hiding for 4,000 years." Do-hyun stared at the coordinates. A whole civilization, sleeping in the dark, waiting for someone to save them, and somehow, their message had found its way to him. "We have to go there," he said. Somi shook her head. "It's not that simple. I checked the Federation records. The Veil is forbidden territory. No ships are allowed to enter. The official reason is that it's dangerous, full of radiation and gravitational anomalies. But the real reason might be that someone doesn't want anyone to find what's inside." "The Accord," Do-hyun said. "Maybe the old species are still out there, still in charge. If they knew the HFY survived, they would finish what they started." Do-hyun thought about the salvage yard on Titan 7, about all the broken ships he had pulled apart over the years. Humans were newcomers to the galaxy. They were small and weak compared to the species that had been traveling among the stars for millions of years. If the Accord noticed humanity, really noticed them, what would happen? "The message found me," he said slowly. "The ship chose me. There has to be a reason." "The reason might be that you were cheap and desperate enough to buy a cursed ship," Somi said. "Maybe. But what if it's something more? What if humans are supposed to be the ones who find them?" Somi was quiet for a moment. Then she sighed. "I knew you were going to say something like that. I knew it the moment I saw those coordinates." She closed her equipment and put it back in her bag. "When do we leave?" "We? You can't fly to forbidden space alone." You need someone who can read those old systems. Someone who can figure out what we're walking into. Besides, I've been stuck in classrooms for 3 years. I could use an adventure. Do-hyun smiled for the first time in days. It might be dangerous. Everything interesting is dangerous. Somi stood up and stretched. Let's get the ship ready. We have a long way to go. How? They spent the next week preparing. Do-hyun traded the last of his spare credits for fuel and supplies. Somi downloaded everything she could find about the Veil and the Eri and the Accord. They plotted a course that would avoid Federation patrols and take them through the lawless regions of space where questions were not asked. On the night before they left, Do-hyun sat in the cockpit and looked at the stars through the reinforced glass. He thought about the hologram and its strange, sad eyes. He thought about 3 million people sleeping in the dark, waiting for someone to remember them. He did not know if he could save them. He did not know if he could even reach them. But he knew he had to try. The galaxy was much bigger than he had ever imagined. And somewhere in that galaxy, something lost was waiting to be found. Do-hyun started the engines and pointed his ship toward the stars. The adventure had begun. The journey took 3 months. 3 months of jumping between stars, hiding from patrols, and watching the familiar constellations slowly change into patterns that no human had ever named. Do-hyun and Somi took turns flying and sleeping, eating packaged meals that all tasted the same, and talking about everything and nothing to fill the long hours between destinations. They had close calls. At a fueling station near the border of human space, a Federation officer asked too many questions about their destination. Do-hyun smiled and lied, and said they were traders looking for new markets. The officer did not believe him but let them go anyway, too busy with other problems to care about 2 young humans in an old ship. Later, in the lawless regions beyond Federation control, pirates found them. 3 ships surrounded them and demanded they surrender their cargo. Do-hyun said they had no cargo worth taking, just food and fuel for a long journey. The pirates laughed and said they would take the ship instead. That was when Somi discovered something new about their vessel. She had been studying the old Eri systems for weeks, learning their language, understanding their technology. When the pirates moved to board them, she found a command buried deep in the ship's code. She activated it without knowing what it would do. The ship changed. The hull shimmered with light, and the strange symbols that decorated its surface began to glow bright blue. The engines roared with power that should have been impossible for such an old vessel. And then, before Do-hyun could even react, the ship moved. It dodged between the pirate vessels like a fish swimming through water. It spun and twisted, and flew in ways that no human pilot could have controlled. The pirates fired their weapons, but the ship was never where they aimed. In seconds, they were past the pirates and jumping to faster than light speed, leaving their attackers far behind. When the ship finally slowed down, Do-hyun sat in his chair with shaking hands. Somi stared at her screens with wide eyes. "What was that?" Do-hyun asked. "The ship has a combat mode," Somi said quietly. "The Eri built it to fight. And when it fights like nothing I've ever seen. After that..." Do-hyun looked at his ship differently. It was not just a way to travel between stars. It was a weapon. A survivor. A piece of a civilization that had refused to die. He wondered how many battles it had fought before it came to him. He wondered what other secrets it was hiding. As they traveled deeper into unknown space, the ship continued to change. Systems that had been dark for centuries came back to life. The cockpit displays shifted from human letters to Eri symbols, though Somi had modified them so Do-hyun could still read them. The hull grew brighter, the symbols glowing constantly now, as if the ship knew it was finally going home. On the last day of the 3rd month, they reached the Veil. From a distance, it looked like nothing. A patch of space that was slightly darker than the space around it, where the stars seemed to fade and disappear. But as they flew closer, Do-hyun felt something he could not explain. A pressure in his mind. A weight on his thoughts. Like someone was watching him from very far away. "The Veil is not just empty space," Somi said, studying her screens. "It's some kind of barrier, energy fields, radiation, things I don't even have names for. Nothing should be able to get through, but the coordinates are inside," Do-hyun said. Yes, and our ship knows the way. The ship moved forward without Do-hyun touching the controls. It aimed itself at a specific point in the darkness and accelerated. Somi grabbed her seat as alarms began to sound. The hull shook. The lights flickered. Strange colors washed across the cockpit glass. Colors that Do-hyun had never seen before. Then, suddenly, everything was calm. They were through. Inside the veil, the universe was different. The stars here were old and red, giving off a weak light that barely reached them. But in that dim glow, Do-hyun saw something that took his breath away. Ships. Thousands of ships, floating in silent formation around a massive structure at the center of the veil. The ships were dark and still, covered in the same symbols as Do-hyun's vessel. They had been waiting here for 4,000 years, patient and quiet, like soldiers standing guard over something precious. And at the center of the formation was the structure. It was huge, bigger than any space station Do-hyun had ever seen. It was the size of a small moon, built from the same dark metal as the ships, covered in the same glowing symbols. Lights flickered across its surface, faint but steady, like a heartbeat. "They're really here," Somi whispered. They survived. The structure's defenses activated as they approached. Weapons turned toward them. Massive guns that could have destroyed their ship in an instant. Do-hyun reached for the controls, ready to run. But Somi stopped him. "Wait," she said. "Look." The weapons were scanning them, not targeting them. The ship's symbols flashed in response, communicating in a language of light. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the weapons powered down and moved away. A voice filled the cockpit. It was different from the hologram on that first night. This voice was older, deeper, filled with exhaustion and hope in equal measure. It spoke in the HFY language, but like before, Do-hyun understood every word. "You carry the beacon," the voice said. "You heard the call. After 4,000 years, someone finally came." Do-hyun's hands were shaking. He tried to speak but could not find the words. Somi spoke for him. "We are humans," she said. "We found this ship on our world. We followed the coordinates. Are you the HFY?" The voice was silent for a moment. Then it spoke again, and there was something like wonder in its tone. "Humans, we know of you. A young species, new to the stars. We did not expect you to be the ones who answered. But you are here, and that is what matters." A door opened in the side of the great structure. Light spilled out, warm and golden, unlike the cold red light of the old stars. "Come," the voice said. "Come and see what we have saved. Come and learn what we have lost. Come and help us decide what happens next." Do-hyun guided the ship toward the opening door. His heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. He thought about the salvage yard where he grew up, about all the broken things he had fixed over the years. This was the biggest broken thing he had ever found. He did not know if he could fix it. He did not know if anyone could, but he had come too far to turn back now. The ship passed through the door, and the golden light swallowed them. Inside the structure, Do-hyun found 3 million people who had been sleeping for 4,000 years. And they were finally waking up. The inside of the structure was like nothing Do-hyun had ever imagined. The walls curved in ways that seemed impossible, covered in lights and symbols that pulsed with a soft rhythm. The air was warm and smelled faintly of flowers, though no plants were visible anywhere. Everything felt alive, as if the whole station was breathing. Somi walked beside Do-hyun, her eyes moving constantly, trying to take in every detail. "This technology," she whispered, "it's thousands of years more advanced than anything humans have. They could build things we can't even dream of." A door opened ahead of them, and a figure stepped through. He looked almost human, but not quite. His skin was pale blue, and his eyes were larger than human eyes, with golden irises that seemed to glow in the soft light. His arms had extra joints that bent in unusual ways. He was tall and thin, and he moved with the careful grace of someone who had lived a very long time. "Welcome," the figure said. His voice was the same one that had spoken to them from the station. I am called Tyson now. I chose a human name to honor those who finally answered our call. Do-hyun bowed slightly, not sure what else to do. I am Kang Do-hyun. This is Park Somi. We came because your message asked us to. Tae-soon smiled. It was a sad smile, full of memories that Do-hyun could not imagine. You are brave. Or foolish. Perhaps both. Come, there is much to show you, and little time to show it. He led them through the station, past rooms filled with sleeping figures in glass containers. Thousands of them. Row after row. Their chests rising and falling slowly. Men and women and children, all frozen in time, waiting for someone to wake them up. 3 million of my people sleep here, Tae-soon said. We are all that remain. Once, the Arai numbered in the billions. We had worlds and stations across half the galaxy. We built ships that could cross the universe. We created art and music and stories that made other species weep with their beauty. His voice grew heavy. And then the Accord decided we were too dangerous to live. They entered a large room with a viewing window that looked out at the fleet of sleeping ships. Tae-soon stood before the window, his hands clasped behind his back. The oldest species in the galaxy made an agreement long ago, he said. They would share power among themselves and destroy any new species that grew strong enough to challenge them. It was not cruelty. They believed they were protecting the galaxy from war, from chaos, from change. But it was murder all the same. How did you survive? Somi asked. We saw them coming. Not all of us, but enough. We built this place in secret, hidden behind barriers that even the Accord could not cross. We brought as many people as we could and put them to sleep. Then we waited. For 4,000 years, Do-hyun said. For however long it took, we scattered beacons across the galaxy, hidden in ships like yours. We hoped that someday, a species the Accord had not noticed would find one. A species young enough to be beneath their attention, but brave enough to come looking for us. Tae-soon turned to face them. His golden eyes were bright with tears that did not fall. We did not expect it to be humans. Your species is so new, so small. You have no great fleets, no powerful weapons. The Accord barely knows you exist, and yet here you are, standing in a place that has been forgotten for longer than your species has been alive. Do-hyun felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. He was 18 years old. 3 months ago, his biggest dream was to own a ship and see the stars. Now he was standing in front of the last survivors of a murdered civilization, and they were looking at him like he was their only hope. What do you want us to do? He asked. Tae-soon was quiet for a moment. Then he sighed, and suddenly he looked very old. We have a choice to make, he said. Our sleeping systems are failing. In 50 years, perhaps less, they will stop working completely. Everyone here will die. We can either stay hidden and let that happen, or we can wake up and face the galaxy again. If you wake up, Somi said slowly, the Accord will find out. Yes, they watch the galaxy constantly. The moment we reveal ourselves, they will know. And they will come to finish what they started 4,000 years ago. Then you need to stay hidden, Do-hyun said. Find a way to fix your systems. Give yourselves more time. Tae-soon shook his head. We have tried. For centuries, the few of us who remained awake have searched for solutions. There are none. The choice is not between survival and death. It is between dying quietly in the dark or dying loudly in the light. That's not a choice, Do-hyun said angrily. That's just giving up, is it? Tae-soon walked toward him, his strange eyes searching Do-hyun's face. You are young, human. You still believe that every problem has a solution if you just try hard enough. Perhaps you are right. Perhaps there is another way. But if there is, we cannot find it alone. He reached out and placed a hand on Do-hyun's shoulder. His touch was warm, almost hot, like standing near a fire. We are asking for your help, Tae-soon said. Not your species, not your governments, not your armies. You, two young humans who were brave enough to answer a call that no one else heard. Help us decide what to do. Help us find a way forward. Do-hyun looked at Somi. She looked back at him, her expression unreadable. This isn't our decision to make, Do-hyun said. This involves all of humanity. If we help you and the Accord finds out, they might come for Earth. They might destroy everything we've built. Yes. Taesun agreed. That is the risk. But every great change in history began with one person choosing to act, when everyone else stayed silent. Your species has a saying for this. Yes? Someone has to be first. The words hit Do-hyun like a physical blow. He thought about his life in the salvage yard. About all the broken ships he had fixed because no one else would bother. He thought about the stars he watched every night, dreaming of something more. He thought about 3 million people sleeping in the dark, waiting for someone to give them a reason to wake up. Humans are stubborn, he said finally. We don't leave people behind. Even when it's dangerous. Even when it's stupid. We find a way to help. Somi nodded slowly. He's right. It's probably our worst trait. And our best one. Taesun's smile returned, brighter this time. Then perhaps the galaxy chose the right species to answer our call, after all. Do-hyun took a deep breath. He was about to make a decision that could change the future of humanity. He was terrified. But he was also certain. We'll help you, he said. We'll find a way to wake your people and protect them. We'll bring this to humanity and ask them to stand with you. I can't promise they'll say yes, but I promise we'll try. Taesun bowed his head. That is all we can ask. And it is more than we dared to hope. Outside the viewing window, the fleet of sleeping ships drifted silently in the darkness. Soon, they would fly again. And when they did, the galaxy would never be the same. The journey back to human space took longer than the journey out. Do-hyun and Somi flew carefully, avoiding the main shipping routes and the eyes of the Federation. They carried something more valuable than cargo now. They carried proof. Taesun had given them everything. Data files containing the true history of the HFY and the Accord. Recordings of the messages the Accord had sent before the destruction began, cold and official, like paperwork for genocide. Technology that could change the way humans built ships and healed wounds and grew food. And a small holographic projector that would let Taesun speak to anyone, anywhere in the galaxy. Use it wisely. Taesun had said before they left. The truth is a weapon. In the wrong hands, it can destroy as easily as it can save. Do-hyun thought about those words as they crossed back through the veil. He thought about them as they passed the place where the pirates had attacked them. He thought about them as the familiar stars of human space finally came into view. The Federation found them first. A patrol ship intercepted them 3 days after they crossed back into human territory. The captain, a stern woman with gray hair and cold eyes, demanded to know where they had been and what they were carrying. Do-hyun told her they were traders returning from a long journey. She did not believe him. They were taken to a Federation station and questioned for hours. Officials searched their ship and found the HFY data files. They found the holographic projector. They found everything. For a while, Do-hyun thought they would be arrested. Or worse, silenced. The Federation had rules about forbidden space and unknown technologies. People who broke those rules sometimes disappeared, but then something unexpected happened. One of the officials, a young man who had been quiet throughout the questioning, asked to see the data files more closely. He read them for a long time while the others argued about what to do. When he finished, he stood up and faced his colleagues. These files are real, he said. I've been studying old galactic records for years. The pieces that never made sense, the gaps in the history, the species that vanished without explanation. This fills in all of it. The Accord exists, and if these two are telling the truth, they just found the greatest discovery in human history. The room went silent. After that, things moved quickly. The Federation contacted Earth. Earth contacted the colonies. Within a week, Do-hyun and Somi were on a ship heading to humanity's capital, carrying Tysoon's projector and the weight of an entire civilization's survival. The United Human Assembly met in a great hall that had been built when humans first reached the stars. It was designed to inspire awe, with a ceiling that showed the live positions of every human ship in the galaxy. Thousands of representatives sat in rising rows of seats, watching as Do-hyun walked to the center of the floor. He was still wearing the same clothes he had worn on his ship. He had not slept in 2 days. He was surrounded by the most powerful humans alive, and he had never felt more out of place in his life. But he remembered Tysoon's words. Someone has to be first. He activated the holographic projector, and Tysoon appeared beside him. The assembly gasped. Some representatives stood up. Others called for guards, but most simply stared at the tall, blue-skinned figure who had materialized in the heart of human power. Tysoon spoke. He told them everything. The history of the Eri, the truth about the Accord, the 4,000 years of waiting in the dark. He showed them evidence that could not be denied. He explained what the Accord had done and what they would do again if they learned that the Eri still lived. "We are not asking you to fight for us," Tysoon said. "We are asking you to stand with us, to say that this galaxy belongs to all species, not just the ones who were here first. To refuse to be part of a system built on the graves of those who came before." He paused, and his golden eyes swept across the assembly. "We know what we are asking. We know the danger. The Accord has destroyed civilizations far more powerful than yours. If you choose to help us, you may be choosing your own destruction. But if you do nothing, the Accord will eventually notice you anyway. They will decide you have grown too strong, too dangerous, too different, and they will do to you what they did to us." The assembly was silent. Do-hyun could feel the fear in the room, thick and heavy like fog. These people had built their lives on the belief that the galaxy was a dangerous but understandable place. Now they were learning that the danger was greater than they had ever imagined. He stepped forward. His voice was quiet, but in the silence, it carried to every corner of the hall. "I grew up in a salvage yard," he said. "I spent my whole life fixing things that other people threw away. Ships, engines, computers, things that everyone said were too broken to save. But they weren't. They just needed someone to believe they were worth the effort." He looked up at the thousands of faces watching him. "The Eri are not broken. They're lost. They've been waiting in the dark for 4,000 years, hoping that someone would remember they existed. And we found them. We heard them. That's what humans do. We find things. We fix things. We don't leave people behind." He took a breath. "I'm not a soldier or a politician. I'm just a kid who bought a cheap ship because it was all I could afford. But I know that if we turn away from this, if we pretend we never found them, we become part of the Accord. We become the kind of people who let others die because it's safer that way. And I don't want to be that kind of person. I don't think any of us do." The silence stretched on. Then, slowly, one representative stood up. Then another. Then dozens. Then hundreds. They did not speak, but their meaning was clear. The assembly voted that night. The decision was not unanimous. Some argued for caution, for waiting, for trying to stay hidden. But the majority made a different choice. Humanity would stand with the lost. The war that followed lasted 50 years. Do-hyun fought in it. First as a pilot, then as a captain, then as an admiral, leading fleets of human and Eri ships into battle. Somi built the weapons that made victory possible, combining human creativity with Eri technology in ways that neither species could have achieved alone. It was not an easy war. Millions died, worlds burned. Species that had ruled for millions of years fell from power. The galaxy was reshaped in ways that no one had predicted. But in the end, the Accord was broken. Not destroyed, because you cannot destroy an idea, but weakened and exposed. The other young species of the galaxy learned the truth and rose up against their ancient masters. The rules that had governed the galaxy for millions of years were rewritten, and humanity, The small newcomers who had stumbled into a fight they did not understand found themselves standing at the center of a new galactic order. 50 years after that night in the salvage yard, Do-hyun stood in a museum on Earth. He was old now, his hair white, his body tired from decades of war and leadership, but his eyes were still the eyes of the boy who had looked up at the stars and dreamed of something more. His ship was displayed behind glass, still covered in the symbols that had first drawn him to it. Children from a dozen species crowded around it, listening to guides explain how one small vessel had changed everything. His granddaughter stood beside him, barely 8 years old, looking at the ship with wide eyes. "Grandpa," she said, "weren't you scared?" Do-hyun knelt beside her, his old joints aching. "Terrified," he said. "Every single day." "Then why did you do it?" He looked at the ship. He thought about Taisun and Somi and all the people who had fought beside him. He thought about the hologram that had appeared on that first night, reaching out its hand, asking for help, because someone had to be first, he said. And sometimes, the best person for the job is just the one who shows up. His granddaughter nodded slowly, as if she understood. Then she took his hand and led him away, toward the exit and the bright sunlight beyond. Behind them, the ship sat quietly in its display case. Its mission was complete. But somewhere in the galaxy, other ships were still flying, other beacons were still waiting, other messages were still calling out in the dark, and somewhere, another young dreamer was listening.